Discrediting Atheists with a Statistical Probability Factor. Hello, I'm Dr. Chester Wilk. I can discredit any non-believer or atheist in a debate. That's a very bold statement for me to make, but I can prove it beyond all reasonable doubt. It'll be no contest. And I'm not an expert on the Bible, and it's not because I'm that good, because I'm not, but because my facts are that good, supported by polygraphs, multiple witnesses, a very compelling statistical probability factor, a chiropractor named Dr. Gay, and my former pastor, also named Dr. Gay. And my nephew and I will back up our statements by taking any other reliable polygraph test that we speak the truth. And finally, my ex-wife and my 3 daughters will also have to acknowledge, perhaps to their chagrin or embarrassment, that what I say here really did happen. Now, when I speak of a compelling statistical probability factor, this is what I mean. I had a woman named Mrs. Budek visit my home periodically over a 20-25 year period from when I was a youngster and into a young adult. She guided, advised, and protected me, and only recently did I realize that she had to be my guardian angel when I heard Pope Benedict XVI refer to his guardian angel after he fractured his wrist. Mrs. Budek fit this mode perfectly. She lived like a recluse, refused to tell anyone where she lived. Whenever she came over, always unannounced, she had something of importance to tell me, and she'd be absolutely 100% accurate in every detail. In fact, she was never wrong. She had no personal vested interest. She said if she took 1 penny for what she did, she'd lose her gift. So this eliminates psychics who I do not trust or respect because they have personal vested interest. She came over one day to warn me about a life-threatening bike accident. Maybe I was 15 years old at the time. She said that I'd be entering an alley on my bike with garages on both sides, creating a blind side, and if I didn't slow down, I'd be struck by a car. Incredibly, a few days later, it actually happened on my way to my sister's home. And I could have been killed had I not slowed down and listened to her. The fact that she knew exactly when to come over and what would happen defies all logic and common sense. And this was not just one isolated instance. She did this consistently on numerous different other occasions whenever she came over. Now here's a Google picture of the alley. My sister lived in that white house second from the corner, and I was going to her home at the time. My life could have very realistically ended right on that corner. She cautioned me that I'd have a holdup in our grocery store one day by 2 men wearing Russian fur hats, and not to make any sudden quicker moves to frighten them because they were extremely dangerous and that they mean business. 2 men wearing Russian fur hats robbed us at gunpoint, and as they were leaving, one of the men removed the bullet from his gun, placed it in the palm of his hand, showed it to my mother, and said, "I just want to show you that we mean business." The very same words Mrs. Budek used. In another instance, she told me that a man in a white uniform would urge me to leave the optometry school I was attending and change schools, and I should listen to him because I would do much better if I switched schools, and that I would become, in her words, very famous. Shortly thereafter, I went to my uncle, who was a chiropractor, for a backache that I was having, and he urged me to leave the optometry school I was attending and become a chiropractor like he. I initially resisted his urgings because I was in my 3rd semester, but the rest is history. I changed schools, became a chiropractor, and won a major landmark antitrust lawsuit against the American Medical Association, which lasted 14 years, went to the Supreme Court twice. The AMA reportedly spent $20 million on the suit and was found guilty. Well, this made me well known throughout the world amongst all the chiropractors, and her prediction was fulfilled. She cautioned me of a life-threatening marine accident. I was on a fishing trip one day on Lake Wisconsin while my wife stayed in our Scotty trailer at the campsite. And sudden high winds created dangerously high waves. Normally I would have gone towards the nearest shoreline and waited for morning to return rather than to attempt the big waves. But I could not put my wife through the ordeal of thinking that something serious might have happened to me. So I headed toward where my wife was staying, but became the most terrifying experience of my entire life. I didn't know I'd make it, but I barely made it. She was right again. She told me that I'd meet a man who would take a liking to me and that he would be a great help to me professionally. Right after that, I met Dr. Amen Hoff, who took me in his office, had me follow him around, and introduced me to his patients as someone who would be taking over his practice. But he wouldn't allow me to treat patients for the longest time, and I was going to speak up. But Mrs. Budek came over and told me, "Don't you dare speak up or you will lose him." Now, how in the world could she have known to come over and tell me this? I agreed that Dr. Hoff probably would not take kindly to any youngster telling him what to do, so I kept quiet. I eventually inherited what was probably the largest chiropractic practice in the entire city of Chicago. She said I'd later expand my interest beyond chiropractic and become a better Christian. She got that right. And that I'd become more famous. It's happening right now with our national crisis with President Obama, and my message is extremely vital to America's future. What has happened to me is minor compared to the national impact that my books and videos will have on other families in due time. Of this I'm convinced. She said that my wife Ardith would leave me and that all three of my daughters would turn against me. I remember hearing this from my mother and sister, but I disregarded it as being impossible. There was no womanizing, drugs, alcohol, physical, mental cruelty on my part, and I was faithful and true and more than generous to all of them. My wife and daughter's conduct was so outrageously unjustified and wrong that I believe God wanted me to see enough of my future so that I'd realize that what was happening took divine intervention and that I could use my family experience to prove to the world that there is a God in heaven and a devil in hell. I was given a glimpse into my future with 100% accuracy with at least 23 different events, which actually were byproducts of her unique guidance and protection. I knew I was on a mission from God, and that was the reason for this video. I took and passed a polygraph test to prove that everything I say here is 100% true. Polygraphs have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and are used by the police, the CIA, and the FBI. My sister's son, Walter, also recalls Mrs. Budek's accurate guidance, so we will both take any other polygraph test. Now, between the arrows, you're going to see examining has told the truth. And here is my polygraph test. You can see my mugshot on one side and the fingerprints. And then as you go over to the other side, you will see examining is telling the truth. Dr. Peter Stoner, a professor of mathematics, calculated that fulfilling 8 predictions with 100% accuracy was 1 chance in 10 to the 17 power. That's a 1 with 17 zeros after it. He compared it to marking a coin, putting it into a pile of coins 2.5 feet deep, covering the entire state of Texas, and finding the specifically marked coin on the very first try. Now that's for 8, but I have 23 with 100% accuracy. Nobody can dismiss this as dumb luck. It's impossible. This took divine intervention. Some people may suggest I'm getting my guidance from a negative source. To them I say, get real, man. Look at the titles of my books. They're an outright attack against the devil as a liar, divider, and destroyer. Christ even said the devil could never attack himself and survive. A chiropractor by the name of Dr. Gay invited me to speak to his local chiropractic organization. He lived over 2,000 miles away, but incredibly within 1 mile of my ex-wife, Ardith. Small world? There's 1 chance in 3.8 million of this happening based on a square mile to the United States. Well, not only that, but he has the same last name as our minister, Dr. Gay, Doctor of Divinity, who was our minister and even counseled both Ardith and me in the past. Now, the statistical odds of both things happening is beyond statistical probability, but they happen. These facts can be supported by South Park Church and over 100 chiropractors who attended that meeting. Now, what more proof do you need? My motivation for filing an antitrust lawsuit against the American Medical Association was that the AMA was unlawfully trying to destroy my profession with negative propaganda, while 3,000 people were dying every week from unnecessary medication reactions. plus an additional 300 more deaths every week from unnecessary surgery. And these deaths are still happening today. This comes to over 165,000 people every year dying from unnecessary medications and surgery in America. Medical doctors are supposed to save lives, yet they have become the third largest cause of death in America after heart disease and cancer. Meanwhile, chiropractic provides a very safe and effective drugless non-surgical treatment for musculoskeletal and stress-related ailments and headaches, yet the AMA was trying to destroy it. The AMA committee, which stated within its secret internal memos that the prime mission was to, and I'm quoting, contain and ultimately eliminate chiropractic, unquote. An informant or a mole leaked these secret AMA documents to the U.S. Justice Department, and it became public knowledge. Well, I became livid. I referred to AMA as the American Murderers Association and compared the AMA committee with the showers of Auschwitz. This had to be stopped. I explained this to my wife. Milliman and Robertson, the world's largest and highly qualified and respected x-ray firm, said that 60% of the general surgeries in America were not necessary. Whoa. These are professional x-rays coming from a respectable source like Milliman and Robertson is very credible and should not be ignored or taken lightly yet, but to this day they have been ignored as people die needlessly. You have the drug interest covering it up. There are 50 times more disc surgeries being performed per capita in some of our states in America as compared to the number of disc surgeries done in England. Now that's scandalous. When medical doctors went on a labor union strike at one time and only performed necessary surgery, the death rate dropped by 153 patients within 1 month, according to the Los Angeles County record. The devil gets into healthcare. We are killing ourselves with excessive prescription medications and unnecessary surgery because of an unholy alliance between the medical doctors and the pharmaceutical industry, spending $1.5 billion, that's $1.5 billion a month, selling, promoting, mind program people into taking pills. $1.5 billion a month is obscene and excessive. You know, this comes to $350 million a week, which is more money spent within 1 week by the drug houses pushing drugs than the entire chiropractic profession has ever spent promoting itself for 120 years. Drug promoters are primarily interested in making money selling drugs, which may not always be in your best interest. There are 2.5 drug lobbyists for every legislator in America, and the drug companies have the politicians in their back pocket. Drug abuse is a major and costly public health problem in America. Prescription drugs kill more people than traffic accidents, guns, AIDS, breast cancer, diabetes, respiratory diseases, and stroke. The World Health Organization says that the United States is the #1 most expensive healthcare in the world, yet it's ranked number 37 in quality care. The markups on drugs is astronomical. 11 cents worth of the ingredients in Prozac will cost you $247. Some medical experts say that Prozac is worthless and dangerous, so why promote it? Hey, how about 247 reasons? We've all heard these television commercials. Ask your doctor if this medication is for you. It's as if we can't survive unless we're taking pills. We've been heavily programmed into becoming a nation of junkies, consuming enough prescription drugs within 1 year to create addicts of epidemic proportion, or 20.1 million people, enough to put every man, woman, and child under the influence of these drugs for 1 month. Every 14 minutes, someone dies from taking unnecessary prescription medication. It's the #1 cause of bankruptcy in America. This is the devil's covert influence on our health care system, and we need to expose and correct it. The devil gets into families. If more people knew the ways of the devil, we'd have less divorces. The devil convinced my wife that I loved chiropractic more than her, and so she divorced me. She bought this lie straight from hell. Yet the love for my family remains the same today as when they turned against me over 7 years ago. This is agape love, and it'll never fade. About my oldest daughter, Kim. The only reason Kim gave when she turned against me was that I put hot water in my wife's restaurant coffee to cut the caffeine, which she insisted was controlling. This is absurd. This is a loving and caring act, and I only added hot water with my wife's permission. You can ask Kim Wilk yourself. She's a firefighter in Denver, Colorado. This was a ridiculous thing for Kim to say, and she could not give me any other valid or rational reason. This was the devil's influence on Kim. As for my middle daughter, Kathy, she turned against me because I expressed concern for her health, for wanting to become a beautician, since she was allergic to hairsprays. She told her mother to pack up and leave me if I didn't give her the tuition money. I would have given it to her anyway, but she said in a vulgar way where she would not kiss me for the money and stormed out of the house. Kathy was a 30-year-old woman at the time and had no such entitlement, especially after we had helped her purchase her home. Many of the furnishings in her home helped her purchase a beautiful brand new deck boat, and I planned on divesting ourselves of our summer home at Apple Canyon Lake and giving it to her as a gift, and buying out my other daughters since they lived in different states. For Kathy to live 2 blocks away and completely write me out of her life and deny my seeing my only granddaughter could only come from the devil's influence. Kathy is not that mean. Also, Kathy liked my naturopathic diploma, since my chiropractic diploma covered my work. I gave it to her. When she turned against me, she gave my diploma to a house sale instead of returning it to me, which was a contemptible thing to do. And so God intervened. A nice gentleman who bought my diploma called me on the phone, asked me if the diploma was accidentally thrown away. And when I told him what happened, he came over to my home, returned the diploma. Now, the chance of this happening was 1 in 1,000, but his name was John, the same as Kathy's husband, which becomes 1 chance in 1,000,000. While this John's mother's maiden name of all names, and I hope you're sitting, was Wilk, the same as Kathy's maiden name, which became an impossible combination. This took divine intervention, and we were not related since his mother was Jewish. I found only 2 Wilks in the entire Chicago telephone directory. You can't make up stuff like this with multiple witnesses and back it up with polygraphs. My youngest daughter, Cindy, she had a troubled childhood, was defiant, belligerent, disseminated her hatred throughout my family. Her conduct reminded me of the movie Bad Seed. She was bulimic, and I had to take her to a hospital one time to remove a spoon from her throat. This had to be the devil's influence on Cindy. She was walking around the house one day saying, "I filed him, I filed him, I filed him." We'd ask Cindy, "Who'd you file, Cindy?" "I filed the devil. He wanted me to do it, but I filed him." This was a sign of what was to come. I've had no contact with my family for over 7 years. Meanwhile, the good Lord wanted me to see this in advance so I could see how these events would unfold so that I could write about them and publish their outrageously bad conduct as coming from the devil. I didn't ask for this gift, but it was given to me, and overwhelmingly proven to me by God for its impossible accuracy. So that I may glorify Christ and write about it in my books and publish these videos to prove that there is a devil and that we're all in the midst of a major spiritual warfare. I have consistently maintained this position now for over 7 years and have never wavered from it. This is the real thing, not a flash in a pan. I hope my family and the churches and their pastors open their eyes and realize this. Some of the biggest hypocrites are in churches. If my entire life was not outlined for me in every fine detail with 100% accuracy, which only God can do, I would not have been writing these books or creating these videos. I would have given up on my family and quit a long time ago. But put yourself in my shoes, and if you experience what I did, how would you react? I believe most reasonable people would do what I'm doing. And the devil gets into churches. I've seen it happen within South Park Church in Park Ridge, Illinois, as its minister, Reverend Eric Flood. He complimented a woman for leaving her husband without a cause, refused to suggest that she needed marriage counseling, which, by the way, was my ex-wife. I gave Eric Flood my books so that he cannot claim ignorance of my family's outrageous behavior. Reverend Flood's secretary told me on the phone, "Don't send me an email, Dr. Wilk, because I won't open it." Reverend Flood's chief assistant disgracefully told me in church, "Move on, get another wife." This kind of talk has no place within a church. A church should unite, not divide families. The North Coast Presbyterian Church in Encinitas, California, to which Artist belongs to now, is no better. And the other churches in Park Ridge, Illinois, and Encinitas, California, were notified as to what happened, but they never responded. It doesn't speak well for our churches. There's a telephone survey called Barna Study. 40% of the Christians polled by the Barna study believe that the devil is only a symbol of evil. But if this was true, it would make Christ either a liar or a fool, because Christ made it crystal clear that there is a devil. The devil did such an excellent job of convincing people that he doesn't exist that people are afraid to mention the word devil so not to become stigmatized by it as a religious nut or an extremist. For example, the media and press covering the tragic killing of 9 innocent black people in the church. The pundits in the media, they pontificated, they analyzed, they evaluated, they tried to explain and blame why any person would do such a horrific thing. And this included pastors, ministers, who appeared on these talk shows, but I never heard them blaming the devil as being the causative factor. And why not? They should have. Ask any minister or priest privately, and they will all agree that it is possible for the devil to influence people. I'm not coming up with anything new or revolutionary, so why not make that statement publicly? I'll tell you why. There's a reluctance to blame the devil publicly because of the stigma which goes against anyone who uses the word devil. It's a turnoff. For example, what did you think of me when you first heard me use the word devil? So you can understand what I mean. I can assure you that I am no religious crackpot, and the facts I have are reliable and acceptable within the Christian community. We're in a spiritual war with the devil, and he hates the Judeo-Christian way of life, and the devil is getting into people, making them do these horrible things. That's your answer. As for the black people, they have it better in America today than any other time in the history of the world. They're given all kinds of preferential treatments for what was done to them decades ago. Yet they are their own worst enemy, and that includes President Obama. There's a family breakdown amongst the blacks, allowing the devil to gain entrance. From a secular point of view, their behavior is stupid, irresponsible, and unappreciative after all which is being done for them. But from a Christian point of view, and as I see it, the troublemaker is the devil. The Republicans were the abolitionists, siding with Abe Lincoln. So you'd think that all the blacks would support the Republicans, showing you how the devil blocks their mind to not see the obvious truth. Most of the prejudice and paranoia is harbored within the black community against the white people. Did you know 85% of the race crimes are committed by blacks against whites, while the black people make up only 13% of our population? The white people elected a black president twice, proving that prejudice is not a major issue except within the minds of the black people. And some blacks dishonestly exploit it. In my mind, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, they're not civil rights leaders. I think of them as being hucksters. Al Sharpton is an extortionist, demanding money from organizations that become accused of being called a racist. Al Capone was sent to Alcatraz for non-payment of income tax of approximately $215,000. Well, Reverend Al Sharpton owes the IRS $4.5 million in past taxes, shows absolutely no intent whatsoever to ever pay back one penny. He not only gets away with it, but gets to sit at the table with President Obama in the White House. Do you think he'd get away with it if he was white? And then there's an enormous and unfair double standard between what our cops are allowed to do to enforce the law and what the criminals are allowed to do to get away with it. If you see a cop on the street, thank them and tell them how much you appreciate them. They are heroes, but too often made into scapegoats. You can imagine what America would be like without police enforcement. If your spouse is a cop, give her or him a big hug as a genuine hero, and do the same for those people in the military service. Internationally renowned minister Dr. John Phillips summarized it best when he said, and I quote, "Our enemies are not people. We must see beyond people. Satan may use people to persecute us, lie to us, cheat us, hurt us, or even kill us. But as long as we see people as enemies and wrestle with them, we will spend our strength in vain." And so my battle is not with my family, but with the devil who influences them. And it's not with the black people, or with the American Medical Association, or the pharmaceutical industry and the MDs, or with President Obama, but how the devil gets into and influences them. If any atheist or non-believer ever challenges my authenticity, I would ask them how they can possibly explain a person coming to my home, making at least 23 accurate predictions, and have each prediction in itself, being multifaceted, becoming fulfilled. I would ask them then, What is more likely, life after death or finding that marked coin in Texas on the first try? So far, I haven't had any takers, and I doubt there will be any. The only logical answer is divine intervention. I suggest that all of you ministers and priests out there better listen with an open mind, because what I have experienced is the real thing. My nephew and I will take any polygraph test and prove it. The devil gets into politics. Now, this should be the most obvious area of all. For example, why would President Obama swap a deadbeat military deserter for 5 dangerous terrorists? Or arbitrarily release 36,000 dangerous criminals from our prison and be releasing more? Or refusing to put sanctions on Iran and allows them to build a nuclear bomb intended to be used on us? Or refuse to put a ban on travel from West Africa during an Ebola epidemic? Or allow sanctuary cities to harbor criminals and illegals? And 30-some other good reasons. Some people say that President Obama did was stupid. But come on, folks, nobody can possibly be that stupid. Get real. But he sure can be that influenced by the devil, and that's the answer. I think he sold out to Satan. There are too many negatives to be coincidental. I have 38 examples in my video entitled, The Devil is Influencing President Obama, on the YouTube. Once again, The Devil is Influencing President Obama, on the YouTube. As for the Democratic Party, a louder vocal majority of our delegates at the last Democratic convention voted to remove God from their platform. Listen to the video for proof. If that isn't a smoking gun of the devil on the Democratic Party, then nothing is. But they left God in anyway. They can't even do a floor vote with honesty. As for Hillary Clinton, she has no core beliefs. Her passion is all about money and power. She doesn't have an ounce of integrity in her body. I don't see how she could ever become a viable candidate. You know, I got to sit next to Senator George McGovern on a flight to South Dakota one day. I know the good Lord set this meeting up. This wasn't dumb luck. I've had too many of these experiences to be coincidental. But here I was sitting right next to the former Democratic candidate for President of the United States. Wow. I was overwhelmed. He was one of the nicest, most likable, and down-to-earth persons you could possibly meet. I asked him what he did after his unsuccessful bid for the presidency, and he said he went into business for himself and he bankrupted. He blamed it on too many government regulations. Case in point, Senator McGovern was going to try to run our country, but he couldn't even run his own business without bankrupting. I even got his autograph in which he wrote all good wishes to Chester Wilk from his flying seatmate, which I cherish. And here it is. You can love Donald Trump or you can hate him. But he's absolutely correct when he says, number one, we have to have the Mexican government build a border for us. We have enough leverage to where they will do it. And number two, we need some very smart, tough negotiators. Not wimps, but tough negotiators and smart on international trade. Our negotiators must be smart and tough to appropriately deal with China, Japan, and Mexico. And stop giving everything away, including the kitchen sink, while putting ourselves deeper and deeper into debt, as we've done for years with international trade. I only hear this excellent solution coming from Donald Trump. So why aren't the other candidates picking up on it? I suggest they put politics aside and openly agree that Trump is right. Until the other candidates are honest with themselves and others and acknowledge this truth, only then will we be able to save Social Security, help our veterans receive better health care, rebuild our military, and ultimately remove our national debt, which is coming dangerously close to destroying us as a nation. To dismiss Trump's suggestion by saying that people can build tunnels under the wall is unrealistic nonsense. It'd be like saying we don't need locks on our doors at home because of the occasional home break-ins. Come on, get real. With modern technology, it can be minimized. And we must focus on safer and more rational, drugless utilization of our healthcare options. Stop killing ourselves with prescription medications. and unnecessary surgery at the rate of 3,300 people every week. That's 165,000 deaths a year. Do you realize that? A modern-day medical surgical holocaust. Add to this the devastating cost of unnecessary surgery. Drug houses wield too much influence on our legislators, and we have an opportunity with someone like Donald Trump, who will not be obligated to the drug interests. The question we need to ask ourselves, if we want nice people running our nation into economic bankruptcy, or do we want tough and smart business negotiators looking out for our economic interests as a nation? The other candidates need to get on board with this issue. Thank you for watching, and I am Dr. Wilk, and here are my 2 latest books. They are available from Amazon in paperback and also as an e-books on Kindle. The Case for Christ and Against the Devil, The Devil's Intervention into Healthcare, Politics, Churches, Courts, and Families.